So, this is the very first debut of our comics section.
That is
which
correct.
we've been wanting to do for a long time. And I am a huge comic book reader, a huge comic book fan. And Dan, on his old show, used to do a
Comics for people who don't like
comics, which I always
great.
thought was comics for people who don't like superheroes.
A little bit,
Interesting.
but I will bring up some of the comics that I
Well-
referenced that have plenty of superheroes.
Nice.
Okay.
Mon frere.
But that's kind of the slant of it, wasn't
A little
it?
bit, yeah, a little bit.
But
And
I'm the everyman.
and Alex isn't into comics at all.
Hasn't
And
read a
I-
comic since he was a kid.
I feel like this show, at least this segment for this show,
Yeah.
at least in the initial part, is going to be kind of me trying to get these guys into comics first
Yes.
and into superheroes.
Wearing tights.
Capes and cowls, baby.
Yeah.
Dude, I like capes and cows.
Okay, so the way that
what I thought he said.
the strategy that I employed for this goal, at least at the outset,
Was to give us the biggest book ever.
the best. Why not go right to the best? Because it's worked with other of my friends in the past. I had Alex read Watchmen and
Yes.
Dan reread Watchmen.
Yes. Well, yes.
Right.
Finish reading Watchmen.
So, Watchmen, Alan Moore's magnum opus, widely considered the greatest work of in the comic form, the comic medium.
Time. Tell them the time.
Time number
Tell
8 of Time Magazine did the best
yeah.
books since I think it was like Finnegan's Wake. It was like the best books since
1923.
so yeah, a certain
Yeah.
point. The best, and it was voted number 8, which means either A, it's actually really good, or B, nerds know how to use the internet to vote.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Okay.
internet voting.
Yes.
And you didn't say that. I was like,
But-
wow, those Time Magazine guys are really forward thinking.
Still,
Yeah.
I love The Watchmen, and I hope that I'd love to hear what you think of it, Alex. Having not being a comic reader, read The Watchmen.
The Watchmen. And begin. I really enjoyed it. Yay! I started enjoying it even more after I found out that the characters were not real superheroes. Because there was like a couple, like the Moth guy.
Well, they're based on old school.
Well, the idea he originally wanted to do it with DC canon characters,
Right. And I'm
DC
glad
said
that
no,
he did.
and so he
I can entirely see why they said no. Although what might have been interesting, but because I felt like I was like, wow, they're really showing the real human bad side. So a couple things that
Well, what's Watchmen about?
Well, Watchmen is basically, it's about a group of masked adventurers.
vigilantes, yeah.
And they basically start out because this guy, Hooded Justice, who wears a hood.
It's a murder mystery.
It starts as a murder mystery because basically somebody gets murdered at the beginning of the first book. I don't know any of the language of comics.
The
'Cause
first
it's like
trade.
a book,
I mean,
but
well, the
it's
first
what do they call it?
issue.
Like
It's a trade paperback, and the first issue is when the murder happens.
Okay.
It was 12 issues that were collected into
Right.
it.
So in the first issue, it's a murder mystery, and it turns out that the guy who was killed is actually a masked adventurer. And so then it goes on to one of his buddies that they used to fight crime in this sort of group, league, if you will, without saying Justice League. He goes in and tries to figure out what it is. So it follows these people, but they're all retired. Because in
because-
77, there was a Keynes Law came in, and they basically said, masked vigilantes, es no bueno.
So basically, the conceit of Watchmen, the idea that it's based on, is that when comic book characters were introduced in the real world,
Yes.
the year that they were introduced with Superman,
Right.
it was the same year that in this world, real masked vigilantes became
Right.
And then
ran
later
around
on
and
they
solved
outlawed
crimes.
them.
And then they passed a law that said, and we're coming into the story after this law has passed.
Yes.
And then this person is murdered, and it kind of brings up a lot of this old stuff.
And I will say, from beginning to end, I truly enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. Rorschach, cool guy. I love that.
Possibly Tom Cruise.
Really?
No.
That's
Rorschach?
what I read. Yeah.
Wow, he should be like.
Zack Snyder,
ugly
who
dude.
The owl, or
who did 300, Zack Snyder is doing the
I'm
Watchmen
actually
movie.
or
by
Dr.
watching-
Manhattan. He could play Dr. Manhattan.
He's not big enough.
That's
But
what computers are for.
yeah, right. But I will say, from beginning to end, and knowing that they were going to make it into a movie, I was really interested. I was like, wow, this is going to be such a cool movie. Like, I'm so intrigued by it. I definitely had a few things that I didn't like about it.
Like what?
Jeff's like, oh, really? Like what?
Oh, Jeff.
I was not a big fan of the big chunks of writing at the end of every book. Because to me, I was like,
words.
no, because first off, most of it was no information I needed. Some of it were literal recaps of what I'd just seen. A few of them were really cool, like the one where Adrian, Ozymandias, like a couple of the little like notes, business notes from like the teams that sort of showed you a little bit more of what was going on with him. I dug that, but for the most part, I was always like, got to get through this shit that doesn't matter, and then I can see the story. For me, this is me. I also didn't really care for the pirate flashes.
But you get that in that world.
I got it, that it was all parallel, and that there was stuff. I got all those.
Instead of superhero comics, they have pirate comics.
I got all that. But for me, I was just sort of like, oh, the pirate guy. And there's a lot of stuff that I loved. Loved Dr. Manhattan. I thought his creation story, his whole ability, the whole trade where they followed Dr. Manhattan, and it's all in the way he thinks as far as time is concerned, I thought was amazing. I loved the trade with Night Owl and Silk Spectre getting back into adventuring and then falling in love. Like it was really well done. I super enjoyed that one. I thought the ending was good. I mean, I kind of saw it coming, but then again, I read them all back to back, so I'm not going to.
And also, there's a whole lot of fiction that's come post that has sort of lifted a little bit from Watchmen that I think maybe you
like current television shows airing right now.
Well, I didn't realize that it was written in 1985 or whatever. I mean, that was really cool.
Let's see what Dan thinks.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple.
So my history is I just want to say I am well aware. I'm putting myself out there to be flamed very shortly, and I hate that I'm going to say stuff like this. But I hate Watchmen. I tried to read Watchmen twice growing up, and when I read it tried to read it the first couple times, I never read those. I always skipped the writings at the end of the chapters. This time around, I read them, and I actually thought the original, the Hollis Mason writings were the best part of the book. So it's just interesting that my child, in what I skipped growing up, and I didn't like Watchmen, I now got me to like it a little bit more. That being said, I actually kind of don't like Watchmen. I fully respect it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I like the things that have come because of Watchmen. It's Watchmen for me, and this is what I'm scared of too, is a little bit like Apocalypse Now for me.
Wow.
Apocalypse Now is a movie
you don't like.
I fully respect.
Interesting.
I've tried watching Apocalypse Now. I've seen the beginning of Apocalypse Now. I cannot tell you how many times. I appreciate.
You can tell me.
Yeah.
10.
But for some reason, it's just something in my DNA. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't. I can't.
Yeah.
I get what it has done.
Yeah.
Both Apocalypse Now and Watchmen. I totally get it. And it's saying very profound things. I just don't like how it's said. Watchmen is very dense, and it's very
That's what's
meta.
great about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I get why it's good.
Reading it, I can tell why you love it. Right? I mean,
Jeff is very dense.
No. He loves it. It's very articulate.
Yeah.
It's very intellectual, and I know that you the words are every word is important. It seems to me in this book. And I
Jeff
know
is
that's
like a
something
wordsmith.
You're like a wordsmith. You make words out of hammer and anvil.
What was I going to say? The thing about it is there's no drama in Watchmen. And I actually have this problem with Alan Moore.
Interesting.
Because I felt the same way about V for Vendetta.
Really? There's no drama in V for Vendetta?
To me, he's telling a message, and through that, and it's all just sort of happening. And I don't feel there's no characters until Watchmen, until midway through Watchmen, or towards the end when we get the Silk Spectre and Dan stuff.
Yeah.
There's no conflict other than the big conflict. There's no person that has this dilemma that I'm trying to see if it works out, whatever, setups, payoffs, it's all kind of just happening, very objectively. I love things like Powers, which, Alex, if you enjoyed Watchmen,
we're going to get there. He's going to get there.
By the way,
gonna get there.
In Tights, superheroes, buddy. Powers and
Yes. No, I agree. It is.
Ex Machina. These are two things that totally
Ex
come
Machina is
straight
not.
from. He was a superhero.
Oh, well,
yes.
all right.
But let me just say,
Yes.
these are two comics where the dialogue is. I can empathize with the characters. It's saying I love things
You can't empathize with the owl. You can't empathize with
A
that
little
feeling
bit.
of like impotence.
A little, yes. That you know what
mean,
book
you
that
should be
happens
able
on?
to feel
I can relate to impotence. That happens in book like 7, dude.
I know.
Like-
that was an epic book, though.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I'm just saying, I really tend to fall in love with things that are like smaller stories that when I interpret them, it means bigger things than something that sets out to say something really huge in a really huge way.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'll
I,
say
I,
one
res-
of the-
I can respect that opinion. It's wrong, but I can respect it.
one of the other things that I'll say that I didn't really love about this was I wanted them to be superheroes. I mean, I know that was the whole thing was that they were like the sort of Batman and Robin type characters.
That's
it's
like
like,
powers.
you know, working out and then I can kick some butt. You know what I mean? And then it was cool when Dr. Manhattan came in because it was sort of like I like, for me, superhero stories. I like the supernatural aspects of it.
Yes.
For me, and so there wasn't much of